Hi, and welcome back to another episode of the History of Fan Anime. I'm your host, William Chow. In today's episode, it's a really first of a series of episodes. I'm going to try to attempt to do something that I've not done before, but I always had the idea of, and that is to do a review on some written work about anime. Okay, so people have been using anime to write essays, to write like theses and documents, and obviously homework assignments and that kind of stuff about anime. And so in this episode is going to be a start of a long chain of episodes, because obviously to fully do an analysis on a written work, it may require me several episodes to go over different points and that kind of stuff. But um, this is one of these sort of rare situations I get to do this. So before I begin and talk about this, I want to remind people to go down below, click like, and click subscribe. Again, any sort of comments and things that you would write down does help the YouTube algorithm. So at least hitting that like definitely does really help. So do please do that. Again, if you want to support me financially, I do have the super thanks button available, as well as the PayPal and Patreon links. Again, I've now added a little more content to the Patreon. So again, if people who are interested in my new ebook that's out, I've now added video versions of that available now. Again, so again, you can go to the Patreon, you can log in for free, and again, I've made it so that any of the paid accounts, has access to that first ebook for free, and the video version, you get a massive discount on it as well. So in case you would like to get a video version of the ebook, okay, as well as the audiobook as well. So do check that out. Link is below. Okay, so as I said, in this episode, I'm going to be going through and doing analysis on these written pieces of work. So people have obviously submitted either thesis documents or maybe their homework assignments, or that's for some of the writing, creative writing, or in this case it's whatever studies that they happen to be doing. Okay, and it uses a lot of references to anime, and part of the reason why I made this this channel is to inform people and to record and document history, of this age of anime that we've had in North America. And a lot of people who are doing this kind of research and that kind of stuff are having problems finding actual sources and actual information in regards to this era of anime. Okay, and and I've seen it from people from Crunchyroll and people from various different magazines and that kind of stuff are all interviewing different people and are trying to find information about the origins of how anime got this way. So in today's episode, I've come across a piece of writing. Okay, it does have this sort of a political sort of type of leaning towards it. Okay, and again, I don't want to talk politics and that kind of stuff, and most people don't really care, especially on this particular part of the channel, because my emphasis is on this again, documenting a time period in our history that that transpired and isn't well documented. Not very many people have written too many articles and that kind of stuff about it, and not too many people, especially from this particular era, have basically documented what exactly has gone on in this thing. And so what ends up happening is people tend to rely on things like Google and whatnot to write their essays and to get confirmation bias on their particular works. And this is particularly poor when Google does not show results for things that happened in the 1990s or the 1980s, right? They actually need some people, some interviews, and that kind of stuff to be made. And that's, primarily one of the main functions of my channel here, is to provide this documentation, to show you pictures, to tell you stories and accounts, show you merchandise and things that came from that, and how we came across it, getting this stuff, what this means, tie in things that happen in anime with things that are happening in real life. Okay, and that's what I'm trying to do with that. So again, this isn't a typical type of episode, and the way that I'm tackling this episode is maybe a little bit strange and very very long. Okay, but I assure you, even though we are touching a little bit on politics, do not pay attention to it too much because I won't delve too deeply into it. Okay, I'll touch on it, but I won't really get into why what particular things that happen on that, because there's a lot of factors and that kind of stuff, and that's not what this particular channel is really about to. But what I want to address, and which is the most important thing, is when people do research, okay, and they go and try to find information that supports their research, okay, and they use Google and that kind of stuff, this is confirmation bias. The fact that you're specifically looking for information and looking for essentially yes men, okay, people that will say yes to whatever you say, to basically confirm what you're writing. And of course, this is really poor scientific method, right? And since the topic is anime, I want to be this person that comes in and says, okay, using my own accounts, my own and whatever evidence and documentations and that kind of stuff, fan letters and newsletters, merchandise, art books, or whatever that happens to be, that I have available as a historic archive. I want to present it to you and tell my story in helping you understand and build this picture, the story. If you want to, kind of have a vision that's not just in front of you but around you, right? What are all the other factors that transcribe around you? So when I describe what the environment of, let's say, an anime convention in 1991, or some of the funny stories and conflicts and cosplay and that kind of stuff that happened at Comic-Con in '89. Okay, I want to not only tell you the story, I want to see if I can get you some pictures. I want to give you some context of why this is this particular thing happened. Was there any other things happening at the con that might have transpired? What about any sort of popular culture things that were also happening, or news stories that was happening at that particular time that has a significance of why this sort of thing occurred in anime? And this is what I want to present. Okay, this is the history part and the accounting part and of course the recording of and documentating of this kind of history, because as I said, um, we're all getting older, okay, and if we don't tell our story, if we don't get it, told in and documented, then we may become people like Carl Masek, Don Yee, Torrance Smith, all these people who are pivotal members of the anime community, but they're no longer around anymore, and they can't tell their story, and and all the things, whether or not good, bad, conflicts, their opinions on stuff, on how they handled things, and all the inside stories that we can't find on Google, and people didn't post on any sort of form, gets lost. Okay, that part of history is lost, and until someone comes through and documents it, maybe brings out some receipts and brings out some scripts or things of basically historical importance, okay, like these anime artifacts, if you will, okay, um, you know their story will never be fully, as I said, fully appreciated and fully understood, and then it'll be just basically left for interpretation. And one good example I just did a few episodes ago is the story of the most mysterious song on the internet. Okay, the mere fact that it is highly possible that most members of the band who wrote that song are no longer around. Even the producer that probably made that thing is probably, maybe, possibly no longer around. And with that, it may be very impossible to find out who exactly wrote that song and where it came from and that kind of stuff. And it may be just one of those untold, basically unsolved mysteries, right? And in this era, at this particular time, there should be no excuse for these untold mysteries or unsolved unresolved and unsolved anime things in history. Because as I said, we are still very, very young. As I said, we have entered a year of 40 years of anime in North America here. We should be able to have and document our own history and be able to do that, because as I said, we're not that old yet. Not that old yet, so let's get that. Okay, so anyway, I apologize for such a long opening. But yes, so here we're going to be in. I'm going to break this up into smaller episodes, and I'm going to kind of spread them out so that it's more digestible, and people can think about and do the different things rather than one big, huge 5-hour, 6-hour long video. Okay, so I'll break it up for you. All right. So without further delay, let's begin.
Okay, so she defines negative networking practices on rec.arts.anime. So these are what they're gonna, she defines as what negative networking is. Okay, and she goes 1, blaming female fans for their lack of visibility, doubting the authentic interest of women in anime, demystifying the female anime fan, harassing female anime fans, criticizing the association of feminism with anime both as an interpretive practices as scholarship, okay, and belittling female anime fans' concerns, and denying and ignoring challenges faced by female anime fans. Now, determining the fact that there's probably so few anime fans that are probably out there, because we're already dealing with a very small pool of anime fans in general. I mean, here's one way I sort of will describe it, right? When I went to university, first year, applied math. Okay, so basically, it's your first year university. Basic calculus. Okay, with an engineering twist. All right. Basically, it's the differential, differential calculus. Basically, getting basically, the integration of all those type of things, right? In their math and in engineering problems. Okay, we probably had a class about 400 people. About 400 or so, because it filled one lecture hall theater, and I would say there's probably maybe 40, maybe 50 women in there. Okay, so it's not a majority or that kind of stuff, but there's a fair number of them in there. Okay, and notably speaking, they would probably all have access to the internet, especially first year, because we all had to take computer sciences, and we were learning Pascal and C at that time. Right, so again, in order to get onto the servers, you probably had to have an email address and that kind of stuff. So that's fine. Okay, second year rolls around. Okay, so these are the people who continue their studies in engineering and whatnot. Okay, and not go away and say, okay, we're not either they didn't make it or they they went to other courses. Right. Okay, second year engineering math. Okay. Same sort of lecture hall, okay. I'm pretty sure there was probably about 300 to 400 students in that lecture hall, okay. But the number of women in there, like 10, 15 now. And this is basically second year calculus. So this is integration, so area underneath the curve, basically solving matrices and using matrix reduction and that kind of stuff in order to solve the area underneath the curve, or the slope of the line at any point on the given curve, right? Things like this. It's very dwindling, right? So, and again, all those people who no longer continue on, no longer need their university email addresses and that kind of stuff. So the number of women probably are very similar in distribution, because again, based on the email addresses that are available in there, right? Then we factor in, okay, so now we've got this very narrow pool of people, okay, just using the percentages and that kind of stuff. We're now talking less than 5%. Okay, let's just round up a little bit and say, okay, so less than 5% of the entire population of all the people that would have been on this thing are going to be female. Okay, and now they're taking that, even a chunk of that population, and saying that, okay, what of those people would be interested in going onto this news group to talk about anime? Okay, and so we're talking about a median, okay, a genre, which is not, indicative of playing stuff that they're interested. It's like, you said earlier that, oh, there's news groups like on alt fan dot soaps, right, dealing with soap operas, something that that is very highly supported by females. Okay, but to say that that same number of female people that would be interested in that kind of thing, where there's no why do guys care about that thing? Well, why can't that be applied to anime? Right? Here you have a median, especially in the time range that you are specifying. So basically, from 1985 to about 1995, that sort of entire decade of anime. Okay, the animes that came out weren't designed for women. So why in the hell would women want to watch it? Okay, because the Japanese weren't releasing things that were really interesting to women. Okay, until, as I said, literally when you get like '92, where Sailor Moon just started coming out, and then then obviously you're going to get all the rest of the things that came out at that particular time. Nadia, Utena. Hime-chan's Ribbon, Miracle Girls, and so forth, right? All those things didn't come out until, later in the 90s, okay? So, here you have the issue of, okay, so you have a very, very, very few female people on the rec.arts.anime at all. They don't play animes that they particularly care about. I mean, sure, there is, not saying that there isn't some females here and there, sure. You mentioned a bunch, Lorraine White and Trish Lido and that kind of stuff. Yeah, sure, okay. So those could be the few that were out there, okay. But for the majority of the people that I've interacted with and whatnot over the internet, I interacted them over mail. I interacted them through real life situations, i.e., they went to their fan clubs. They went to their CFO chapters. Okay, some of the most powerful and most influential people on the internet in the early stages were female. They, Sue Chamberlain, who did the Anime Hashin and the Rose. There's Pam Buck, who did the whole Bay side, this sort of thing, and of course the joke dubs from the Dirty Pair. And then of course there's the New York chapter of the CFO, Pat. Okay, what's her last name? Hasbrook. She does all the stuff over in New York, right? So they ran their own clubs. Okay, they weren't marginalized. They weren't being criticized for their lack of visibility. No, absolutely not. They were, they were the leaders of their club, and people were willing to go to their club and join their club and go to their monthly meetings and that kind of stuff. They had no problem. Okay, there was no negative networking happening in real life. Okay, sure, on something as that has anarchy sort of placed all over it, the anonymity and everything on such a clunky thing as the rec.arts.anime. Yeah, okay, sure, maybe, right? But certainly it didn't happen in real life. And by sort of taking this really small segment and very specialized grouping of for a better word, a bunch of frat boys, okay, essentially, because you look at the age group, at where these people have got their stuff. Like, so for example, you look at the demographic even closer, okay. Normally, anime is aimed at the elementary school kids to high school kids to university school kids, that sort of thing, and sort of early manhood, before you get married type of sort of lineage there, right? Because but again, they're expected to get married by about 25 because there's that term that women expire when they hit 25. The term in Japanese is Christmas cake, because after 25 they're expired, right? So the aim for the marketing departments for a lot of these anime people is in that range bracket, right? They're not aiming to make animes to appeal to 30-year-olds, okay? Or in my case, they're not making 80s animes, or 80s anime styles and that kind of stuff to cater to me, who is Gen Xers, who are over 50. Okay, that's not what the Japanese companies are doing. Okay, they've been always making anime for this sort of narrow group. Okay, now you take rec.arts.anime and internet at this particular time. Well, obviously, school kids don't have access to this internet. They have absolutely no, like the public people in the school system do not have access to the internet. Okay, high schoolers do not have access to this internet. Okay, because in elementary school or that kind of stuff, and a typical high school, okay, won't have access to these things. Most as I said, virtually. Every single high school will not have access to a .edu address. Okay, maybe if they're attached to a university or something. But I mean, other than that, it's very rare because most of the programming and that kind of stuff that they would have done, they wouldn't have done on these things. They probably would have done it on like an Apple II computer or something, which was again very expensive. And unless Apple decided to, they're part of the Apple, education program, they probably wouldn't have the ability to buy a lab full of Apple II computers. Okay, so it's pretty safe to say that the only time that you're going to get access to this news group or Usenets, okay, is that you basically have to be in a university or college. Okay, you basically have to be in some sort of program like a math or a computer science. Okay, most likely computer science, because even in, unless it's like a high level thing like when I took third year probability and statistics, right? I had to use a modeling program to model ships coming into a harbor at different rates and at different times, and then you basically had to model whether or not when it got high capacity, low capacity, and when bottlenecks and traffic jams would occur, right? So that kind of thing required me to have access to the to the computer, but for the most part, right, engineering and that kind of stuff obviously would require that. Mathematics would obviously require, computer sciences do that. So when I was in first year university, right, again, there was probably about our math class first year, linear calculus. Okay, it was about 400 people in our math class, and maybe 40 or 50 of them would be women. Okay. And again, everyone had to take this first year of a calculus there, right? And and most of them would probably also be taking applied computer science. Okay, so we so for programming and that kind of stuff, at that time we were doing Pascal and C, so not even C plus or C sharp. It's just the old-fashioned C. We'd have access to to the computer, and thus we'd have a .edu. So it'd be like in my case it would be at ubc.bc.ca or ubc.bc.ca.edu. I think that's something like that is what our address would have been, right? But again, what will happen is that next year, so we're not talking second year of calculus. So this is integration, area underneath the curve, the slope of the line at any point in the curve type of thing, a resolution of area underneath the curve using the reduction of matrices. Okay, things like this. Um, you know, uh, again, probably still about 300 or so people in the class, but the number of females in the class would be down to like 10, 15. Okay, so it really breaks down to like who exactly is using this system, and you can say I'd have to say when you get into your first and second years of university, it's obviously those people, primarily guys. Okay, high percentage of them. And then, of course, if they continue onwards, right, and they get a job, maybe outside of the university, and they go to a government installation like the IRS, maybe the Library of Congress, maybe things like the Smithsonian Institute, or maybe they'll get a job at NASA, or JPL. Or maybe to get some company jobs and actually get go to Apple or Microsoft or something and actually get a .com associated with their identity, right? But these are very rare, right? And only probably to the age of I said 25 or so, because I said the number of people that sort of get caught up in things afterwards sharply drops, right? Again, beginning based on the jobs that you get, right? So, so what you're saying is that sure, there's maybe a very sliver, let's say less than 5%, okay, of the main population of users on this Usenet are probably going to be female, and sure, as you said earlier on, that on news groups like altfan.soaps, okay. Sure, maybe there's a high, maybe all the users on there are, watching, soap operas and are female. Okay, well, that's great. But to say that, that same equivalent and try to bring that same, concept over to anime, okay, where it is a medium which is not catered to the female audience, right? The Japanese don't care about the female audience, especially around from 85 to about 95. Okay, look at all the animes out there. Of course, you probably did, because obviously this person never did. Okay, but fortunately for my channel, it does exactly just that. We go through and analyze all the different sort of animes, and I've did the entire decade of the 80s, and now I'm going through the 90s right now, and I can tell you most, again, probably 90% of the animes that are out there are not designed for women, okay? They focus on the 3Gs, as I always comment. Girls, guns, and gore. You start putting any combination of those things together, you pretty well much got yourself an anime, okay? So they're not concerned about that kind of stuff. So now you're going to say, okay, the few, the 5% of the women that actually are on this thing, and, and you're going to try to say that those same 5% of the women are all interested in this thing called anime, which they probably aren't. It's like saying, are all these 5% of women interested in cars, for example? Because obviously there's news groups out there talking about cars. There's also news groups talking about baseball and football and things like that. Okay, because they were also available on rec.arts, rec.arts. Whatever you can say, football, NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, whatever. They all had those subcategories all available on them, right, under alt.fan. Whatever, right. Why aren't you complaining that women aren't on all those? Because those are things that women are not interested in. Okay, and here we have a form of entertainment, anime, and that kind of stuff, which is producing content that they're not interested in. I mean, tell me how many women are watching, the popular animes that were coming out at this particular time when they really weren't meant for them, right? Like this thing, the most popular animes, right? Megazone 23, Macross, Ixer 1, Dangayo, right? a lot of people will find out, well, hey, that's, those are rather, can, have a, shall we say, dirty scene in them, shall we say, right? They might find that offensive, okay? Or they might feel that, oh no, that's mystifying the female, thing, or we're sexualizing. That's it. The female form, okay. And that's one of those things that, that's not right. That's the thing. Yes, and well, heck, for that matter, let's consider. As I said, we talked about the stigmatism of being a otaku, right? Because being labeled as an otaku was not a good word at this time, right? If you were labeled as an otaku, you were basically categorized as that guy that basically lives in the basement and watches anime all day. Most likely, it's probably hentai all day, and reading manga all day. And he's a loner and all this other stuff. Essentially, you're basically equating the word, incel, for example, the modern word of incel, to the word otaku, okay? Because that's what you're basically saying. You're basically just kind of stuffing them all into the same mold. And by doing that, you're also saying that, oh yeah, all the otakus and all the people that are on r.a.a. are all these, otakus, or all these incels, as you like to call them, right? Where, in real life, they're just ordinary people, right? They're obviously they're smart enough to get into universities and that kind of stuff, and in government installations to either get these jobs or to study at these universities. So obviously they're capable. They're obviously going to be intelligent enough to be able to take computer sciences, learn C, or Pascal, or any of the programming languages that we had at that particular time. Okay, so definitely they're not the people that are like homeless or bums or anything like that. No, not at all. They just happen to like this thing called anime. Okay. And they are, as I said, they are in very, big positions to succeed in the world. Doing all the development, they're doing research. That's hell. Like, as I said, some of the major people in this thing are all parts of very big corporations. Because if you look at some of these, and of course that's probably one of the things that she didn't do, is you look at some of the tags under, behind all these people, like the banners or their signature lines, okay? Because I see them all the time, right? For example, the guy at r.a.a. Project, right? He works for JPL. I mean, it's that literally. He's they're part of the team that sent the Voyager to frigging Jupiter and Saturn, okay? Like, sure. Maybe an otaku, but definitely very accomplished, right? Would you call him an incel? Like, this is silly. You also look at some of the logos that are underneath. Very major companies. Hewlett Packard. Like HP. You'd see IBM. You'd see many, as I said, big companies, like I said, like Apple and Microsoft, okay, Adobe, and things like this, right? They were all really big names and leaders in the tech industry, right? These are the people who pioneered what we have today, for the most part, right? So definitely very intelligent people, very well placed in society, and they got a life working for them. Yet you want to call them, as I said, put the label of otaku on them and bring that sort of the mystification of that, basically that lonely guy that lives in his basement, kind of thing, right? I said the modern version, as you label them, as incels. Okay. Again, couldn't be farther from the truth, but that's what you want to try to label it, right? You have to know your population, you have to know your distribution, and you have to know where this kind of thing is. Now, granted, at this particular age, okay, especially since the majority of the mass number of people that have first introduced to this thing called internet and rec.arts.anime are again college and university students. So very much the frat boy, as I like to refer, because again that's their age group, sort of attitude and mentality. So if you can gather that sort of thought and mentality, you can kind of sort of determine what their behaviors and that kind of stuff are going to be like, and you have to understand that's probably what's going to happen. All right. Am I saying it's right? No, I'm not saying that what they do is appropriate or inappropriate. But you should understand that that's where the majority of things come from. Okay, whether or not you want to label them as otakus and incels or whatever you want to call it, you can put whatever names you want on that, because that's essentially what you're doing is doing the same thing. You're applying negative networking practices on them by labeling them as otakus, as incels, as people who live in the basements, as people who are not productive to our society, who are not following the feminist agenda or whatever, right? Aren't you doing the exactly same thing, providing negative networking, right? So it goes both ways.
Thank you for sticking along and basically staying with it for this long. I really appreciate that. I said again, this is not typical content that I like, that I like to to do, and but I think it's very interesting. Not so much for the the topic or whatever of the particular essay here, okay? Because I don't that's probably that's politics and that kind of stuff is something I don't want to get into on this particular channel. But again, the importance of is correctly documenting events that happened in the past, especially in this very important golden era part of anime, and making and setting the record straight. You can make your own interpretations, and as when I remember when I took when I was on jury duty, okay, someone made a very prolific statement, okay, which really shaped the way how I think and interpret things. And this is what he said. You can choose to not believe, partially believe, total believe, none, some, or all of the evidence. Okay? So think about that. You can either, and this is it, there's, you've provided 6 different possibilities for one particular type of outcome. So if someone presents you a piece of information, you can choose to 0% believe none of it. Okay, like you have no confidence in it. You can have some belief or some particular confidence of some level, or you can be totally invested in believing this thing. Okay, but also you can also choose to believe none of the evidence. So, if multiple pieces or one piece of evidence that has different facets of it, you can choose to believe none of that. Maybe some parts of the evidence you deem credible and you will believe some parts of that. Or you trust the evidence, okay, so you fully believe that this evidence is 100% all parts of the evidence, so all the evidence as a whole, and you can choose to believe none of it, some of it, or all of it. And you can choose what level you believe it to, whether or not you just decide to 100% with or 0% confidence in any parts of that, partial confidence in 0 to all of it, or 100% confidence in none or all of it. Okay? Seems kind of confusing, but at the same time, it really resonated with me about how you would learn to interpret things and take the parts that you want to, that you feel credible, okay, and then you can analyze that using critical thinking to determine whether or not you wish to add this to your base of knowledge or disregard it as just total fluff, or maybe something in the middle. Partially you agree with certain parts, you don't agree with certain parts, you feel fuzzy about certain parts, but you're confident that the evidence is actually true, but you're not really sure. Well, that's so it handles all the different gray zones, both positively on that. So again,
the goal here is to train your mind how to see the world differently, how to question what others say. I've come to realize that there are three categories of truth: personal truth, political truths, and the objective truths that shape our understanding of the universe. The interesting thing about an objective truth is that it's true no matter what. Imagine that.
that's just something one story I like to reflect on. But again, we have more episodes of this. This is a fairly long essay, but as I said, I'll split up the episodes and have more of that again. So thank you for staying on this long. But again, don't be turned off by the fact of the topic that this is about. Because I'm not going to try to cover the politics and that kind of stuff a little bit. I'll touch on it a little bit just because I have to. But for the most part, I want to stick to the history. All right. So thank you again, and I will see you in the next episode. So until next time, I will see you again.